Derek Carr.
Derek Carr.
Derek Carr.
Derek Carr benched for the last 2 games.
Derek Carr looked fucking phenomenal.
Yes. Derek Carr.
So I found myself in a little predicament here. The Las Vegas Raiders play football in a few days, and I don't know how to feel. Or maybe I should say, I don't want to feel the way I do. I had more faith in the Carson Palmer Raiders than this team, and that's saying something. I've been trying to figure out why I feel the way I do this offseason, and I couldn't believe it when one message from a friend opened my eyes so clearly. But before I get to that, there are 2 things I'm certain of. Derek Carr and the Saints are what I'm most excited for this year, and if there was ever a doubt, I'm a Raider fan for the rest of my life. Josh McDaniels is truly something. It's not like I'd go as far as to say he's ruining my life, but he's made my favorite team and my favorite sport less exciting. Just a pain in the ass, like a nagging hemorrhoid. And don't even get me started on the fact that we're literally owned by Tom Brady, or I'll go down the conspiracy rabbit hole that the Patriots took us down from the inside. It sucks. Being a Raiders fan is hard enough. I don't need this on top of that. Whether it was Rich Bisaccia, Jack Del Rio, Tony Sperano, rest in peace, or even John Gruden, awful early draft picks and team management be damned, I would take any of them over this guy. Unlike any of the other aforementioned coaches at their time, nobody that I know aside from a percentage of Raiders fans would want Josh McDaniels to be their head coach right now. Buddy Ryan, Rod Marinelli, Romeo Crennel, Eric Mangini, the list goes on and on for coaches that were truly great coordinators or specialists, but they just didn't or don't have what it takes, for one reason or another, to be the main man. Being a head coach is more than just play calling, and these people need to be able to execute in all facets of football, no matter how minute or trivial you would think they would be.
4th and 5 is doable.
We got 3 timeouts, E. I might use one right here, E. Let's use one. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one.
Running a play.
Oh, and by the way, the best NFL assistant that should never be allowed to be a head coach, dating all the way back to 2013, is Josh McDaniels. If there's one thing I'm hopeful for with the current front office, it's the draft. In the past 2, they've managed to not mess things up, which you would think is expected. But for those of us that follow this franchise, I don't know if I can take any more years of...
The Oakland Raiders select DJ Hayden,
Carl Joseph, Garyon Conley,
Cleveland Farrell,
Damon Arnett.
Alex Leatherwood, Leatherwood.
Just kidding. I'm used to this shit. I still personally believe Josh McDaniels is a good offensive mind, and Dave Ziegler has done nothing I've been overly upset with, aside from the whole Derek Carr thing, but I'll get to that. Unfortunately, I think they've made too many mistakes to repair a possible relationship with, if anyone, me. I think with more time, Dave could be a good GM, and I believe that Josh would be a solid offensive coordinator. But when you're so inept at the job you're currently doing to the point where your own players call you out on your bullshit, I think the ship has sailed. Not knowing how to feel about this, I spoke with one of my longtime friends who happens to be a Lions fan for some insight, and his response made everything crystal clear for me. This made it evident to me that my hatred was for the people in charge, not the organization as an entity. And that was a tough line to draw, considering Mark Davis is beginning to creep up my enemies list. Needless to say, this thoroughly explained why my excitement for the team is at an all-time low. And for the record, I'm just venting here. Everyone outside of the Raiders fan base knows that Josh McDaniels is a joke, even before last year began. I've spent enough of my life trying to convince people to be open-minded about Derek Carr. I find it better to agree to disagree these days. For every person that has the insane ability to be open to opposing views, there's at least one that is just...
Today I'm going to talk about Derek Carr,
Gonna try to keep it as cool as I can, but here it is. Reals can get. Derek Carr's bad. He ain't never been good. He's never going to be good. You're never gonna win anything with Derek Carr, and that's the way it is. If you don't face that reality, you're just a simpleton, low IQ simp, and you have no business giving an opinion publicly or anywhere else because you are just polluting the airways with nonsensical BS. Derek Carr is bad, and he's never been good.
Yeah, it speaks for itself. One of the things that made me question my fandom was not the Raiders releasing Derek. As a matter of fact, even as someone who probably lies closer to being a fan than the hater on the spectrum of Derek Carr, I would have been fine moving on from him years ago. It's how it happened for me, and I wasn't the least bit surprised. Watching Carr throw that last pick on Christmas Eve, I knew it was over. Any chance the Raiders had of making the playoffs was all but mathematically gone, and the Raiders ruined Christmas yet again for what I'm sure won't be the last time in my life. But when I heard he was benched, I was pretty upset. Not letting your franchise player of 9 years, who holds practically every Raiders quarterback record, not finish out the season hurt me on a personal level. It left a really sour taste in my mouth. From a football perspective, I 100% get it. You don't want him to get hurt, so bench him. But as much as sports are a business, they aren't. You make exceptions so that Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade play in the All-Star game for their last season. You keep a player like Udonis Haslem on your bench to practically never play any minutes, just so he can lead. You let Kobe Bryant take 50? He took 50 shots in his last game. And most of all, you take care of your players, so you don't get flipped off on national television. If you're wondering what Derek Carr has done to deserve this kind of treatment, it's because God knows how awful things would be without him. At least in my opinion. There's always the chance to blow everything up and rebuild from the bottom, and that can always work out. But I was coherent just long enough to see what the Raiders were like before Derek came to town, and I'd throw a parade just for him dealing with this incompetent franchise for as long as he did. And hey, if you want to upset your fans because it makes business sense, I get where you're coming from, but don't act like it's wrong to be upset, and especially don't act like there's not an ulterior motive.
But we think it's an opportunity to, evaluate a younger player.
Carr's had the worst ranked defense since coming into the league. He's never had a defense ranked higher than 20th, and despite having his worst year in his career since his rookie season, he still threw for over 3,500 yards and had close to what his projected numbers were for the season anyway, with 2 games missing. I also don't get the people that say Devontae Adams struggled because of Derek Carr. They played perfectly fine together. He'll be joining the Saints, who have had a statistical top 10 defense the last 3 years, and even in a theoretical world where they fail to be a middle-of-the-pack unit, it'll most likely still be better than anything the Raiders ever gave him on that side of the ball. There's plenty of optimism for both fans of Derek Carr and fans of the New Orleans Saints. I reached out to another friend who I'll be following the Saints with this year, and he was excited, to say the least. Couple this with the fact that he's moving from one of the toughest divisions in football in the AFC West to the Weenie Hut Jr. equivalent that is the NFC South, and I think this team could end up going somewhere even by default. Not to mention, the schedule they have might be the easiest I've ever seen. Looking at the quarterbacks of the respective teams, there are very few games where the Saints are worried about the quarterback battle, if any. Maybe Trevor Lawrence, but their most recent matchup was a practical stalemate. With all this in mind, I think the Saints are in a great position to host a playoff game at the very minimum this year, which is good, so I have something to look forward to. In all honesty, I hope the Raiders succeed this year, I really do. But it's hard for me to put full faith into a team when I don't wholeheartedly believe in the people who have to make the big decisions of our franchise. And I don't imagine the people who wanted Derek Carr gone were hoping for Jimmy G as the next heir apparent. I'm personally hoping Aiden O'Connell's on the field by the end of the year. Do you think I'm a fake Raiders fan? Is sobbing on the floor after the 0-10 Raiders beat the Chiefs on Thursday night not enough? Do you think the Saints are primed for a deep playoff run, or will they be disappointed by Derek Carr as some would say the Raiders have been this last decade? Let me know in the comments below. And as always... Wait, not as always. I don't make videos. How do you do this outro thing?
The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea. With a rollicking song, he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten.